You don't realize it's not just the parks. It's also all of the hotels and golf courses and their travel agencies and their cruise ships that they're now investing more and
Yes.
more in. And they just announced last year that they're going to put in $60 billion just into the parks over the next 10
It's
years.
crazy.
$209. One park, one day. No rides included. That's not a resort fee. That's not a vacation package. That's a base ticket at Walt Disney World in 2026. That's not one family complaining. That's the pattern. And while those numbers hit your wallet, Bob Iger, Chief Executive Officer of the Walt Disney Company, hasn't said a word about the crowds that aren't showing up anymore. Let me say that again. Fewer people walked through Disney's gates last year, and the company made more money than ever. Disney's own fiscal year 2025 filing confirms it. Domestic theme park attendance fell 1% year over year. In plain terms, fewer Americans chose Disney last year than the year before. But here's where it gets worse. The parks division still posted $10 billion in operating income, a record high. What that means for you: Disney made more money with fewer guests inside the park. The math has exactly one explanation. Each person who did show up paid significantly more. That's not an accident. That's a strategy Iger signed off on. Now look at what's happening less than 20 minutes down the road. Universal opened Epic Universe. 1 quarter later, Universal's revenue jumped 18.7%. Families didn't disappear. They relocated their vacation budgets. And Iger hasn't addressed it publicly. Not once. The numbers are doing the talking for him. Here's what Iger doesn't want you calculating. That $209 ticket is just the gate. It doesn't include parking. It doesn't include food. It doesn't include the ability to skip a line. You pay $209 to walk in, and then the park charges you again for everything else. What Iger's team calls a premium guest experience actually means pay to enter, then pay again to enjoy it. Here's the mechanism. Disney implemented dynamic pricing. Peak day tickets cost more than off-peak. Such the highest peak is now $209. What that actually does, it trains families to believe there's a cheaper option, and then slowly raises the floor until even the cheap days feel expensive. That's not the end of it. Disney also removed the free FastPass system completely. In its place, Lightning Lane, a paid product layered directly on top of your admission price. In plain terms, Disney engineered the congestion problem, then sold you the solution. The park capacity stayed constrained. Lines stayed long. Lightning Lane stopped feeling optional. What Iger's team calls premium experience curation actually means the crowd is a monetization tool, not a problem, a feature. Now watch what happens next in the math. Per guest spending rises. Total attendance flattens. Revenue hits records. The real cost is Disney's business model now works better with fewer, wealthier guests than with more middle-class families. What they're really saying is, your annual family trip is no longer the target customer, and Universal is right there to catch the families Disney priced out. Here's the part nobody's talking about. Universal didn't just open a new park. For the first several months, Universal restricted Epic Universe access to guests purchasing multi-day tickets of 3 or more days. Here's what that actually does. Families don't split their Orlando trip anymore. They hand their entire vacation budget to Universal and never set foot in a Disney park at all. Iger isn't losing visitors for one day. He's losing them for the whole trip. Now picture who actually pays for all of this. Imagine you're a family of 4 from Ohio. 2 adults, 2 kids, 1 day at Magic Kingdom. Base tickets alone, $836 before you eat a meal, buy a Lightning Lane, or pay for parking. That's before the park opens. That's before a single ride. Imagine you're a solo traveler who saved for a Disney trip for 2 full years. You budgeted based on last year's prices. You arrive and the ticket price jumps significantly since you last checked. The budget you planned is already broken at the gate. Picture this scenario: a grandparent on a fixed income taking 2 grandchildren for a milestone birthday. The Lightning Lane system means waiting 90 minutes per ride, an hour spending another $200 on top of admission just to make the day manageable. That's not a choice. That's a trap. Imagine you're a middle-income family that went to Disney every 3 years. You ran the 2026 numbers. You booked Universal instead. And here's the one that stings most. Imagine you saved 3 months of overtime to fund a 4-day Disney trip. 3 months of extra shifts, $800 in flights. Under Iger's leadership, Disney reported $45.8 million in annual compensation in its most recent proxy filing. Your 3 months of overtime paid for a fraction of a single day of his earnings. And the park still charged you again for Lightning Lane. That gap is the story. That gap is what the $10 billion operating income number actually represents. The hidden catch. Disney's record parks profit didn't come from record attendance. It came from record extraction per guest. That is a fundamentally different business, and it has a ceiling. Now look at what Disney's leadership actually said publicly. CFO Hugh Johnston went on the November 2025 earnings call and stated that Epic Universe seems to be impacting the rest of the competition down in Florida more than it's impacting us. He did not name the competition. He didn't need to. That's a defensibility move. Acknowledge the environment, deny the vulnerability. What Iger's team calls demand normalization actually means they are attributing the attendance drop to outside forces rather than to their own pricing decisions. Here's the part they don't advertise. When your only major competitor in a single market reports 18.7% revenue growth and your attendance falls in the same period, that is not a coincidence. And that's just the beginning. Disney announced $60 billion in parks and cruise investment over 10 years. That was framed publicly as a confidence play. The real cost is $60 billion over a decade is also an admission. The current parks lineup is not strong enough to hold the audience Universal is now capturing without massive reinvestment. What Iger's team calls a strategic investment commitment actually means Universal just forced Disney to spend $60 billion to stay in the fight. Iger isn't running a company in collapse. $10 billion in operating income is not a failing business, but the risk is directional. Trend lines matter more than snapshots, and right now, the trend lines are pointing in opposite directions for Disney and Universal. Now watch what comes next. Watch Disney's next earnings call. Watch whether Johnston frames domestic attendance against international parks numbers to soften the narrative. Watch whether the $60 billion investment produces specific new park announcements with confirmed timelines or stays a headline number with no concrete delivery date. Watch Universal's next 2 quarters. If 18.7% revenue growth holds or accelerates, the competitive pressure becomes impossible to reframe. Watch the 2026 summer booking season. If peak period demand softens, Iger's entire yield management model faces its first real test. Fewer guests, lower spending, and a competitor with brand new attractions and a locked-in multi-day strategy. Disney has the brand. Universal has the momentum. Families have a choice they didn't have 2 years ago. Iger is betting $60 billion that the Disney name closes that gap. Those $209 tickets are the opening move in that bet. The 2026 numbers will be the answer, and this time staying silent won't be an option.